Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Brands Hatch for the next round of the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy and TCR UK, along with the usual plethora of support race action, and plenty of it as well, coming up over the course of basically the rest of the day. We're covering almost every race here today at Brands Hatch on the short, sharp 1.2 mile Indy circuit, which always produces spectacular racing action. Thankfully, the conditions today are a lot more favourable than they were yesterday. We had a lot of practice and qualifying sessions yesterday, and most of them were damp at best, and quite a few of them absolutely soaking wet. The practice session, in fact, for TCR UK early yesterday morning saw torrential rain and an awful lot of standing water. Well, thankfully, as I said, today weather conditions have improved. The racing action, though, should be equally as intense, and our first race is coming up in just a few minutes' time, and that will be the next round of the 2019 BRSCC Mazda MX-5 SuperCup, another championship that always guarantees drama and excitement. This is the 5th race meeting of the season for the MX-5 SuperCup. They have another 2 races to come today, and then 3 at Silverstone in a few weeks' time, and their final 3 back on the TCR UK package at the end of the season at Donington Park. And the Mazdas always seem to produce a really close championship battle, and this year no different at all, and we're anticipating some very, very hot action on the circuit today. Yesterday's race was entertaining. It's slightly damp but dry-ish conditions, and we saw a little bit of argy-bargy and another twist in the championship tail, and we'll talk more about that in a moment or two. Also coming up for you today, we have a couple of races for the Avon Tyres National Formula Ford 1600 Championship. We also have action from the Disclock Civic Cup, who have just completed their qualifying session this morning, as well as the Toyota Tyres Porsche Championship as well, all of which are regular support series for TCR UK. We're also, though, delighted this weekend to be joined by the BRSCC's Ford Fiesta Championships. We've got the Fiesta Championship racing with MRF tyres, which is the, if you like, senior championship of the Ford Fiestas, and then we also have the Ford Fiesta Junior Championship, which is what it says on the tin, really. It's a tin top category for drivers between the ages of 14 and 17, and it is, for many of them, their first foray into circuit racing. For some of them, their first foray into racing of any description. We also, of course, have our penultimate 2 rounds of TCR UK Championship and the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy, which sees a really close championship battle developing at the moment between local man Lewis Kent, the points leader, but only 2 or 3 points behind him at the moment is James Turkington in the Maximum Motorsport prepared Cupra, and with only 4 races to go, it could not be much tighter in the TCR UK Championship hunt. Well, the cars I can see out of my commentary box window are starting to grid up now ahead of our second Mazda MX-5 SuperCup race of the weekend. As I said, they had one 20-minute race yesterday. There you can see the grid looking resplendent here this morning on the Brands Hatch start-finish line. Luke Herbert won yesterday's race, with James Baldwin making a welcome return to the championship, doing a part-season campaign this year, and Jack Harding, who is second in the championship, was 3rd in yesterday's race. All of that means that Herbert now extends his still fairly slender points lead. He's now 14 points clear at the top of the title chase, and realistically Jack Harding now, car number 43 there, the white and red car 3rd on the grid, is emerging as his only real challenger now. But Jack and Luke had contact at this part of the circuit at Druids yesterday, and it briefly allowed Steve Roberts through into the lead of the race. Steve, though, unfortunately later had a spin whilst trying to defend that race lead from Luke Herbert, and fell down the order somewhat, and eventually finished in 11th position. But Steve Roberts has had a few podiums this year, and has won 3 of these MX-5 SuperCup races in the past, so we expect to see that car number 56, moving his way up the order. That's Gary Townsend, who this weekend has some opposition in the Masters category from the returning Simon Baldwin, stepbrother of James Blake Baldwin. He lines up just behind him. Paul Sheard is also racing with us this weekend too. Paul Sheard, one of the stalwarts of Mazda MX-5 racing, and also a man who runs many cars in the championship. And Paul Sheard, good to see him making a racing return and a winning return yesterday in the BRSCC's new for 2019 Club Sport Endurance Championship, which saw him and Aidan Hills pair up to win that 45-minute encounter yesterday. So the grid for this race then is based on the result from yesterday. So it is Luke Herbert on pole with James Blake Baldwin alongside. Jack Harding is third on the grid, Aidan Hills fourth. Then Will Stacey, the youngster, with Simon Baldwin, the leading Masters driver, sixth on the grid. Gary Townsend and Paul Sheard are also Masters drivers, and they will be on the fourth row of the grid. Patrick Fletcher and Nick Rutter next, then Steve Roberts, David Henderson, George Grant and Chris Richardson at the back of the field. Got some very experienced drivers here in this championship, and Jack Harding has won more MX-5 SuperCup races than anybody else, 19 career victories, and he's scored an awful lot of those this year. He has won more races than anybody else in 2019 so far, with 5 victories, including 2 at Croft last time out. But Luke Herbert, with more podium finishes, is the points leader. Well, we're about ready to go racing then for 20 minutes. Race number 2 of the weekend for the BRSCC Mazda MX-5 Super Cup, with Luke Herbert and James Blake Baldwin on the front row together. The lights go out and away they go. And Jack Harding makes a good start from the inside of row 2. Tries to squeeze up the inside of Blake Baldwin, with Steve Roberts going to the outside as well. They're 3 abreast for second place into Paddock Hill Bend, but it will be Harding that goes through into P2 and immediately onto the tail of his big title rival Luke Herbert. And look at Steve Roberts coming charging around the outside through to Druid's corner. And Steve Roberts with a really good start. Oh, that's Paul Sheard getting nerfed sideways by, I think, Nick Rutter, possibly that was, into Druids. They drop down the hill into Graham Hill Bend. All bit of contact there between Roberts and Blake Baldwin as they turn through that very tricky off-camber left-hander and back down the Cooper Straight once again into Surtees. And everybody just about surviving the first few corners. Steve Roberts is still debating this third place. And right behind them is Aidan Hills, who was a championship contender earlier on this year, but a bit of a disaster at Croft, where he had a penalty in race 2, a time penalty, and then retired from race 3 before it even started with a mechanical issue. That sort of dropped him out of contention now, but Aidan Hills there, the blue and orange car, number 8, has had a good start, and he's into 4th place at the end of the opening lap. So the order after one lap then is Herbert from Harding, from Blake Baldwin 3rd. So Aidan Hills is 4th position, and then 5th position looks to be Simon Baldwin. Yes, it's ahead of Steve Roberts. Steve Roberts was fighting back there as they went through the right-hander. There is Simon Baldwin, the second of the blue and orange cars, and then Will Stacey trying to go around the outside of Roberts as well. In fact, Will Stacey is up the inside, and I think he's going to go through as they go through Graham Hill. Back along that Cooper Straight, Patrick Fletcher, the black car, ducking out of line. He's also joining in the fun there, and Steve Roberts unfortunately getting mugged here, and he's going to lose another spot. Is he through the left-hander at Surtees? No, tries to fight back again. That's really close stuff going into Clearways. He does fend him off, and in fact Will Stacey runs wide in front of them, and then Jack Sycamore right behind them. Got his first career podium last time out at Croft as well, became the 29th different driver to have finished on the podium in the 129 MX-5 Super Cup races we've had. Roberts was diving back up the inside there of Fletcher and made it stick. That was a nice move, late on the brakes, and he made it stick as well. So at the head of the field then, the leaders starting to group themselves together. It's a leading 4, and there they are, Herbert, Harding, Blake Baldwin and Hills, and then Simon Baldwin, best of the rest, and leading the Masters class. His nearest Masters contender is Gary Townsend, all the way down in 10th position. The Masters class category for drivers over the age of 50, but they're still, many of them, extremely competitive anyway in the overall running. There, Simon Baldwin with Will Stacey, one of the youngest drivers, the Rob Boston Racing driver, breathing down his neck. Clearways again, the 2 blue cars as one. But Will Stacey with 1 career victory to his name at Silverstone last season. He's had another podium finish though since then, but relatively new to MX-5 racing is Will Stacey. These two aren't though. Luke Herbert and Jack Harding, both of whom are right towards the top of the all-time wins list. As I said, Harding's won more races than anybody else, but Luke Herbert is tied for 2nd on 15 with former champion Alan Henderson, who runs the AK Automotive squad that actually runs Jack Harding's car. So AK Automotive clearly know how to set one of these cars up. Jack Harding knows how to drive them, but having come so close to winning the title last year, missing out by just 4 points to Luke Herbert, Jack Harding is determined not to let that happen again in 2019, but as we get now into the business end of the season, with just 8 races to go, including this one, he is starting to find himself slipping a bit further away from Harding, from Herbert as far as the points are concerned. And that is not ideal for Harding. He needs to try and beat Herbert if he can, but Luke Herbert has this remarkable knack this year of finishing 2nd with the fastest lap. But as you can see, the fastest lap now goes to James Blake Baldwin. So Blake Baldwin in 3rd position, takes the fastest lap, and with it, the 2 bonus points that you score for setting the fastest lap. And what's important about that is that if you finish second, you score 98 points. If you win, you score 100 points. So it doesn't take a great mathematician to work out that if you're second with fastest lap, you score just as many points as the race winner does. And that's what Luke Herbert has been doing time and time again throughout 2019. He keeps on racking up the second place finishes, but with the fastest lap. He has finished second this year, Luke Herbert, some 7 or 8 times. And that is still worth good championship points. Right now, though, if he loses one place, he's liable to lose 2 or 3 because James Blake Baldwin and Aidan Hills are in close company, and Harding is a bit closer this time, coming onto the pit straight. These cars do generate a good slipstream, so Harding will be trying to use that to his advantage. Pulls to the outside, tries to sell the dummy before maybe looking back to the inside into Paddock Hill Bend. No, there's no way through. When you're in a big line of cars like this, it can be tricky to attack and defend at the same time. Blake Baldwin didn't have a great run out of Paddock there, and so Aidan Hills now draws alongside him. To the outside for third place. Now if he can go right around the outside, he'll have the inside for Graham Hill Bend, which he might be able to do. He's out over the curb, but the curbs are more or less dry now, and that was a nice move there from Aidan Hills. Buys himself a ticket to the inside line at Graham Hill Bend and moves into third spot now. So Herbert and Harding with a small gap now over the third and fourth place cars. That gap will start to disappear again, I'm sure, over the next couple of corners. So Hills into third. Aidan Hills is third in the championship as well, once you take drop scores into account. Aidan 5 times a winner in the MX-5 SuperCup. But bear in mind, he's only in his second full season of racing in the championship. It's fairly impressive, actually, his win and podium count. Now he's going to try and work his way an extra spot or 2 up this podium, because he's already onto the tail of Jack Harding as they round that daunting right-hander at Paddock, and Hills has had a better exit there from Paddock Hill Bend. So Harding feels the need just to jink out of line, not so much to attack for the lead, but more to try and defend his second position. Drop back down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend, and all of them trying to hook up that apex curb. Aidan Hills, 3 times a winner this year, won a race at Snetterton and at Alton Park and at Anglesey, but that winning streak broke at Croft last time out, where he achieved only 1 podium actually, which was in the first race. Second place finish in race 1. They're 3 abreast here though through the top of the hill, and look at that, Harding's been well and truly mugged by both Hills and Blake Baldwin. And Jack Harding can little afford to be losing these points. And actually, Aidan Hills, having made the move, now might be about to lose one anyway, because Blake Baldwin's up the inside of him, and Harding is going with him too. Aidan Hills tries to send it round the outside, which he's not afraid to do. All this could all end in tears, and it's allowing Luke Herbert to stretch the margin at the front of the field. So Blake Baldwin goes back into second place now, with Harding still trying to hang on to third, which I think he will be able to do. Yeah, Hills can't go around the outside again at Druids. But that was a tricky moment there for Jack Harding, and this is sort of what happened yesterday really, a race that he seemed to be in control of, leading a lot of the way, and then it all sort of, or in second I should say, most of the way behind Herbert, and then they had that bit of contact and he never really was able to fully recover from that, was Jack. And now he finds himself again down to the bottom step of the podium. Clark curve, they come then onto another lap. This is the completion of the 8th lap of the race. Yesterday they got 20 laps in, but there was a safety car period, so we should get maybe 22 or so in, I reckon. Patrick Fletcher here, having a look at the inside of Will Stacey into Paddock Hill Bend. Patrick Fletcher, former Renault Clio star. Ooh, and gets a bit sided. Oh, Aidan Hills there at the inside of Jack Harding for third place, and that's more points being lost now for Harding. On the exit of the corner, I think that Aidan Hills has been able to go through, and so Jack Harding unfortunately falling even further down the order. Patrick Fletcher has not been able to get past Will Stacey. And Will Stacey there, you can see with a bit of a ding in the rear bumper actually. I'm not sure whether that was inflicted by Fletcher behind. Yeah, Patrick Fletcher, former star of one-make Renault Clio racing, making the switch to rear-wheel drive for the first time this year, and has had some success with it as well. He's going for his first podium of the season is Fletcher, but he's been knocking on the door, particularly last time out at Croft, where he was really quick. Now there is Aidan Hills then, so he's into third place, so as things stand, Luke Herbert would be on for the maximum points, although Hills now runs wide, so Harding is about to change the point situation again by getting up the inside of Aidan into Druids, and he does now complete that manoeuvre. That was a mistake there from Aidan Hills, just a bit wide through Paddock. Once you get onto the dirty side of the road, it can be difficult sometimes to claw your way back online. These two, they're really losing touch with the top two now, aren't they? And you can see the way that James Blake Baldwin has been able to pull away from Harding and Hills whilst they're scrapping over third and close in on the race leader, Luke Herbert. But as things stand, Herbert would be on for 100 points, Harding would be on for 96, so that 14-point advantage for the championship leader would go up again to 18 points now, and that, at this stage of the season, with only 2-point increments for each position on the track, that is a very, very handy margin to have going into the final couple of rounds of the season. A long way to go though, and Luke Herbert knows that these championships can continue to twist and turn right down to the finale at Donington Park, so he won't be resting on his laurels just yet, but double reigning champion is Luke Herbert. James Blake Baldwin though is a former champion as well, and so James, although he's not in championship contention this year because he's only competed in 2 of the previous meetings, but he's just out there for race wins, he doesn't really care about the championship situation, and so he's not going to be afraid to stick it to Luke Herbert here, and Luke needs to be careful to try and protect the race lead, yes, but more importantly protect his points advantage. Second place is better than being nerfed off into the gravel. But James Blake Baldwin, 13 career victories for the number 9 car, the champion back in 2016, sorry 15 excuse me. That was really when the championship started to become really competitive. It's a championship that started in 2013 at Castle Combe with 7 cars on the grid. That first ever race won by Andrew Clarkson, who would go on to be the champion that year. Since then though, it's become one of the most popular racing categories in the UK. You can see why, because the racing is closer than in almost any other championship out there, and with some really, really good drivers on the grid. Generates usually pretty epic championship situations as well. There's Steve Roberts, by the way, 5th. Fletcher is now 6th, ahead of Will Stacey 7th, Simon Baldwin 8th, and Jack Sycamore 9th, with Gary Townsend 3rd in the Masters, rounding out the top 10 overall. Clearways, Blake Baldwin now starting to get the hurry up because Jack Harding on the previous lap was about 3 or 4 tenths quicker than the 2 in front. There you can see Harding and Hills, they're working together to try and close back in on the top 2, and they are achieving that because again they're half a second quicker than them on that occasion, and so now it is 4 cars for the lead again, and Blake Baldwin really feeling the need to get on with this, now goes to the outside. Luke Herbert, there's been contact up the hill, and Jack Harding will need no second invitation to get up the inside, but I think the door has been closed. Yes it has. Blake Baldwin hangs on, but now that there are 4 cars together again, James Blake Baldwin's job gets a lot harder because attacking and defending is one of the hardest things to do, simultaneously at least, in motor racing, and that's what Blake Baldwin now has to do. He has to try and get past Luke Herbert without, in turn, opening the door for Jack Harding, who you know, going into the final third of this race, will be hell-bent on getting back onto terms with his points rival Luke Herbert. Ideally, Harding needs to try and win this race and hope that Herbert drops a few positions further back, but Luke, his drop scores are not all that bad really this year. He's got a few drop scores in the bank, so to speak, so even if he were to fall down the order, it wouldn't necessarily have such a huge effect on his overall championship points. You drop your worst scores of the year, so in essence, if he were to have a non-finish, for example, he would sort of regain some points from earlier on in the season. Hills there, trying the outside line, out of Druids. Back down into the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend. Blake Baldwin seems good out of that corner. He keeps on getting a good exit, but the Cooper Straight is not really long enough for him to do anything about Luke Herbert into Surtees, which in turn is not really an overtaking opportunity, but this corner is Clearways, and that's why Herbert keeps on driving down the inside of the road there, taking a really early apex. It compromises his exit speed, but it means that there's no way through on the inside for Blake Baldwin on the way into the corner. So back across the start-finish line they go then, just less than 7 minutes to go, 14 laps in the book, and James Blake Baldwin finding no easy path past Luke Herbert, and now Jack Harding is right with them again. So Harding, what can he do about Blake Baldwin, who again has to go to the inside there to try and defend that second place. Hills has the freedom at the back of this group to keep on going round the outside into Druids, which he's made work once already in this race, but the theory there being that if the cars in front of him all get stacked up, then he might be able to take advantage of their loss of momentum. Behind them, by the way, in that next group, Jack Sycamore has just got past Simon Baldwin. We didn't quite catch a glimpse of them, but I saw that out of the window going through Druids. So Jack Sycamore starting to work his way up the order. He's now into 7th position. Steve Roberts, by the way, is lapping about 3 or 4 tenths a lap quicker than the leading pack as well, but he's over 3.5 seconds behind them. So unless they really start tripping over each other, it's likely to be one of these 4 drivers that takes the victory. There is Jack Sycamore, having got past Simon Baldwin. He's now straight onto the tail of Will Stacey as they come through clearways again. And in fact, pulls out of the slipstream, goes to the outside. Look at this extra speed you get from that toe. And the AB Motorsport car won't go right around the outside, but might be able to get a switch back. That's what he's trying to do, and I think he's just timed that to perfection. Look at that for a move. That is how you overtake on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, as demonstrated perfectly by Jack Sycamore. That buys you the inside line at Druids, and then as long as you don't leave room for your competitor on the exit, which he hasn't, you can see him cutting decisively across the nose of Will Stacey, and that is enough for you to complete the manoeuvre into Graham Hill Bend. So often the case that overtakes take maybe half a lap or so to develop fully around here, and now that's held them both up, and Simon Baldwin sees an opportunity to get up the inside through Surtees, gets sideways over the curb. It's not really a part of the track you want to be running side by side at. Good racing though between them all. Wherever you look in the field, there is plenty of action, not just right at the front. Well, I can tell you the top 4 are separated by less than half a second at the moment, but so too are these 3 by the looks of it. But Sycamore, with the pace that he's showing in the second half of the race, should now be able to pull away from them. He is about 7 seconds behind Steve Roberts, who on the previous lap was 6 tenths quicker than the leader. So now Steve Roberts is starting to make some serious inroads into the top 4. So we could yet, in the final couple of laps, end up with 5 cars scrapping over the race victory. Jack Sycamore, though, still can't get away here from Will Stacey, who thinks about teeing him up for a move into Graham Hill Bend. Patrick Fletcher is the next car behind them. And he is lapping quicker than them as well, so there you can see the black and red car, number 29 of Patrick Fletcher, starting now to close in on these 3 cars also. So into the final 4 minutes of the race then. Oh, and that was a nice move. Baldwin up the inside of Stacey through clearways. We've had some changes at the front though. Look at this. Yes, Jack Harding's up the inside of James Blake Baldwin, and Aidan Hills is going to try and go with him for 3rd place. And we didn't see how that started, but Hills, who is all out of shape through Paddock Hill Bend, well, actually can't complete the manoeuvre. And in the end, it's Blake Baldwin that fights back around the outside of Jack Harding, who will surely leave him no space. Through the apex of the corner they go. I think there's a bit of a tap there between Hills and Harding, but Harding goes second, and I don't think Aidan Hills will be able to go with him. No, he won't. So somehow they prized the door open, and Blake Baldwin has now been deposed from 2nd position. The question now is whether Jack Harding can do anything about Luke Herbert, because they've dropped the best part of a second behind Luke now. These 3 will need to work together now to catch up to the championship leader, and for Jack Harding, that is something that he really needs to do in this race. He has to try and do something about the points that Herbert keeps on taking out of him. Harding had those 2 wins at his home track at Croft last time out, but then in the 3rd and final race of the weekend, finished 2nd behind Herbert. And frustratingly, in those first 2 races, Herbert was 2nd with, or on the podium I should say, with the fastest lap. So actually Harding ended up losing points over the 3 races, despite having won 2 of them. And now he's having to defend. They are exactly a second behind Herbert then, with 2 minutes and 40 left. They're lapping in the 55-second bracket. So they should get another couple of laps in after this one. Steve Roberts is getting closer and closer to these 3 as well. We will monitor these lap times with interest now. Can Harding drag them back up onto the tail of the race leader Luke Herbert? Ideally, I suppose, he doesn't really want Blake Baldwin and Hills to come with him, because then he, again, will be in that situation where he's attacking and defending at the same time. But then also, the more cars that are stacked up behind Harding, the more chance there is that Herbert might lose more than 1 position. Let's see what the lap times are like then. Luke Herbert comes across the start-finish line now and does a 56.1. It's a 55.9 for Harding, so he was 2 tenths quicker. 2 minutes to go, so we will get at least 2 more laps in, possibly squeeze a 3rd in. Depends what the pace is now over these final couple of laps, because if Herbert has to start defending again, which he probably will have to, then that could be enough to slow them down sufficiently that they maybe don't get that extra lap in, which might not actually work in the favour of Jack Harding, who still is not shaking Blake Baldwin. There's Steve Roberts, the white car, in 5th. I don't think he's quite going to get there, again, unless they really start holding each other up. And behind them, Patrick Fletcher has now caught that next little gaggle. He's going around the outside of Will Stacey, trying to see this out of the window, and it didn't actually work. We'll focus quite rightly on the race leaders for now, because they're going to come through onto the penultimate lap of the race this time, so they will get 2 more laps in. and Luke Herbert, we can see visually the gap has come down. It was 0.789, so let's call that 0.8 of a second. And at the end of lap number 20, it is 3.5 of a second as Jack Harding closes right in onto the tail now of Luke Herbert. So it's a 2-lap shootout, and Jack Harding has to try and beat Luke Herbert in this race, especially since Luke, for once, has not got the fastest lap. There's been a contact as they go into Druids there, but that does not do enough to unsettle Luke Herbert. He stays on the apex, stays on the inside line, and Jack Harding can't quite prise that door open, and he cannot really do it with a headbutt like that, because that will get him in trouble post-race, and the last thing he needs is a disqualification, because you can't count that as one of your drop scores. Weaves to the inside again into Surtees. This is turning into a cracking Mazda MX-5 SuperCup race, a typical Mazda MX-5 SuperCup race, you could say. Harding to the outside into clearways, but he daren't go right round the outside because Blake Baldwin is there and almost pushing him out of the corner. And Harding, you can see there, had to duck right over to the right-hand side of the road immediately to cover any possible attack from Blake Baldwin behind. This is it then, final lap of the second race of the weekend for the BRSCC Mazda MX-5 SuperCup, and Jack Harding is super late on the brakes into Paddock Hill Bend. The rear of the car twitching around under braking. He's almost pushing the leader through the right-hander, but actually it's Blake Baldwin that's quicker off the turn, so Harding has to go to the right-hand side of the road to defend, and Aidan Hill sends it round the outside again. It won't quite work on this occasion though, so they stay in the same order. And that was one of the best overtaking opportunities on the track. So realistically, it's only the last corner that remains. Hill's up the inside of Blake Baldwin there into Graham Hill Bend, and there's almost contact. I think there might have been. Blake Baldwin was sideways, but that takes the pressure off Jack Harding. Jack Harding has now free rein to do whatever he likes now to try and get past a sideways Luke Herbert through Surtees into clearways. Harding goes to the outside, trying to tee up the better exit, but Herbert has it covered, and I don't think there's any way through. It's going to be a drag race to the start-finish line, but Luke Herbert looks as though he is going to come through to take his 4th victory of the season. Luke Herbert, hand in the air, comes across the line and takes a 16th career victory here at Brands Hatch. Fantastic racing though, all around. The winning margin 0.2 seconds, and the top 3 covered by less than 7/10. It's Herbert, Harding and Blake Baldwin, your podium finishers, with Aidan Hills in 3rd position. Steve Roberts will be, in 4th position. Steve Roberts will be in 5th. Jack Sycamore in 6th, although we're now being notified that car 56, which is Steve Roberts, has a 5-second penalty, we assume, for track limits. It won't actually affect his position though, because he was 12.8 seconds clear of Jack Sycamore then, who will end up 6th. There is confirmation of the result. Herbert, Harding, Blake Baldwin, Hills and Roberts the top 5, with Jack Sycamore 6th, Patrick Fletcher 7th, Will Stacey 8th, Gary Townsend 9th, and Paul Sheard, who we didn't see much of in that race after his sideways moment on lap 1, but he does round out the top 10. Then it's David Henderson, Nick Rutter, Chris Richardson, George Grant and Simon Baldwin, who dropped back towards the end, with Bradley Kent, younger brother of the TCR UK Championship leader, Lewis Kent, unfortunately retiring early on. And again, we didn't see what the reason for that was, but I spoke to the Essex and Kent Motorsport squad this morning, and they were saying they were loving TCR, but they weren't having such a good time with Bradley and George Grant, who they also run. There is George Grant coming through, the Clapham North machine. Clapham North, one of the series sponsors too, so thank you for their continued support. But yeah, Essex and Kent Motorsport not having a brilliant time of it in the MX-5 SuperCup with young Bradley Kent. So that was a fantastic race, and Luke Herbert then with another race victory, and he will take 2 more points out of Jack Harding. So by my reckoning, it's now 16 points between them after race 2, with another race later on, and that will be a partially reversed grid race. That's the opportunity in a way to take big points out of your championship rivals, because and again, we saw Luke Herbert do this at Croft. Despite the fact that he finished behind Jack Harding in both of the first 2 races, Luke was then able to get the better of a very chaotic but very entertaining 3rd race at Croft, and actually take enough points out of Jack in that race to take over the points lead. That race at Croft, by the way, the 3rd race at Croft, was one of our top 10 closest finishes, but remarkably, of the 130 races that we've had now in the MX-5 SuperCup, 64 of them have been decided by less than 1 second, would you believe? And there are 5 races that have been decided by less than 1/10 of a second, and that one was only 2/10 of a second, so that goes, that'll probably end up somewhere around, in fact I can tell you where that ends up in our closest winning margin category. So 0.211 will be the 80th closest finish in the championship, and there are many championships out there that would kill to have a winning margin of 0.2 of a second, but we get a bit blasé about it really in the MX-5 SuperCup because it is always so close, and a lot of those closest races have featured somewhere in them Jack Harding and Luke Herbert, who have become great rivals. Some of that maybe bleeds over into the their discussions off track sometimes, but generally speaking they do get on rather well. Right, let's head down then into Parc Fermé, where Bryn Lucas is on hand as ever to have a word with our podium finishers.
Well, the Mazda's never ever disappoint today. Let's go to the race winner, a very happy man. We were talking to you actually off camera before today's race, and you were saying that, you know, championship wise, as long as you keep everything going, it's good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned, you know, I've won 2017, 2018. I've learned that you don't need to get the most amount of wins. It's just consistency. Fastest laps are worth 2 points. So if you can pick up a few fastest laps and get on the podium, then you're doing well. That's just tallied my race win total to 4. So Jack said 5. So just shows how competitive it is. But yeah, the championship's still alive. I've just got to keep it consistent. But you know, with grids like that, it's hard to get on the podium. But I just had the advantage of starting pole and just sitting on the white line the whole race.
It's quite tricky though when you're starting pole, because the Mazdas work really well when it comes to drafting and being able to get in and use the slipstream. So when you're out ahead, you often find that you guys pull away and then you get caught up again, and it seems to be this cat and mouse constantly.
Yeah, it's like that. I mean, I didn't know if you saw, but at one point I had like 5-second gap, I think. I didn't test in the dry on Friday, so these boys did, and so I was like, car didn't feel 100%, but I think it was more me, you know, I was just being overcautious on the track limits, and yeah, Jack and the other three were absolutely flying because they were battling and still catching me, so I didn't have the pace to win, but you know, I was just lucky that I had pole, and reverse grid's going to be tough if I've got that pace.
Absolutely, but it is so important, as you were saying, that you don't put a foot wrong or a tyre too wide, because if you start getting penalty points at this stage, even though you're so far ahead in the title, it could come back and haunt you.
Yeah, I think if a 5-second penalty hit me then, I'd end up 6th or, you know, 5th or 6th. So, yeah, it's just so important to stay on the track. I think, you know, these boys were a bit upset that I was causing a bit of a traffic jam, but, you know, I have to do what I have to do to win. And if that means sitting on the white line, then I'm afraid it's going to be a boring race.
It's never boring. Thank you very much there, Luke, race winner. Let's go and find a couple of others. Let's get second place driver, Jack Harding. So, Jack, quick chat with you. You had a fair bit to do there in that race. You started a bit further back than your two.
Yeah. We started third, had a good start, got to second. But like I said, the leader always defends here. It's the same thing every year, and then it just forms a big queue. And then once you get out of the queue and you're like trying to do something different, you just get shuffled back. And that happened to me a couple of times. I ended up back at 4th at one point, then got back past Aidan, and then luckily he worked with me to get back up to the front 2, and then managed to get past James, and then just. There wasn't enough laps, there was only like 3 minutes to go by the time I'd caught onto the back of Luke, and he just defended really hard on the grass on the inside and everything, and once you do that, taking more than too much. So.
Do you guys have a chat before you start the race about working together if the opportunity comes up, or is it just something that you understand when you're out on track?
It's, you know who you can work with and who you can't. For instance, me and Aidan were battling for third, and we just dropped back from the leaders. And as soon as I pointed for him, and when I got past him, he was like, right, let's go, because otherwise you're just going to lose the back of the guys in front. So, yeah, you know, when you're in the front 3, nobody works with you. But, you know, once there's a bit of a gap and you want to catch the leaders, people tend to sort of be a bit more generous. But, no, it was all right, and we'll see how we go for the next one.
Excellent stuff. We'll go and get your trophy. I've got to speak to the third place driver very quickly, James. If we can have a quick word, James Baldwin. He managed to finish on the podium. Very nice to see you here. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
Talk us through that one very briefly.
Yeah, hard work that one. Managed to get up to second. Got on the back of Luke and was just sort of pushing him to keep going faster and faster to see if we could drop the other 2. But Luke made a couple of mistakes, and sadly they just caught straight back on us again. Jack got up the inside of me at clearways, and I was just, to be honest, napping. So unfortunately, ended up sort of going back down to third and jostling with Aidan, and that's how it is around here. But car was amazing. It's a great weekend. It's what you do racing for, isn't it?
It certainly is. You've got one more to go, so predict that one quickly.
Oh, it's a reverse grid for the last race, so yeah, I don't know. Well, let's just see how far up we can get. I think we'll probably start 4th on the grid, something like that. 5th on the grid, so we'll see.
All right, get your elbows out. Thank you very much there, James Baldwin. So we've had a nice chat to the top 3. They're going to go and get their trophies and have their podium.